Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, Ewan from WhatCulture Comics, joined as ever by Zoe, Miss Kelly. To talk to you today about comics that came out this week, because obviously it's a Thursday, and that means the comics came out on Wednesday, and it was basically a really, really big week for comics this week. We had all sorts going on. I haven't even read everything yet. I mean, I still haven't read Lois Lane, I still haven't read all of Crimes of Passion as well, but there were 2-3 particularly big things that dropped this week, and one of them actually concerns Darth Vader. Now, obviously, if you've been paying attention to the Star Wars comics as of late, you'll know that they had a big relaunch at the end of last year where they basically brought everything up so that it was all taking place after Episode 5. So in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, everything before this was taking place in between Episodes 4 and 5 because there's a bigger time gap. But anyway, Zoe, what happened in Darth Vader this week?
Well, okay, I want to start by saying this was especially weird to me because I'd gotten kind of used to the Star Wars comics not being important, but yeah, they're like very pretty. Usually there's very fun fights. Maybe you learn like a small secret like, ooh, Darth Vader's favorite color is green, but nothing big.
Is it?
That may have been a lie. Tell me down in the comments below. But it got especially interesting with this one because it very much begins and you think it's sort of just a retrospective from the time after when Darth Vader's hunting down Luke after he sort of
I'm your father.
Yeah,
and Luke didn't really react well to that, and this issue is basically Vader just moping around, being like, might just go around and desecrate some graves. I don't know how I feel about that.
So he's sort of sulking, and then he obviously, thinking about Luke takes him to think about Padme. He's like, oh, wish my wife was alive, essentially.
Wish I'd known about the 2 children we had. That would have been handy information.
Yeah, so like any good stalker, he goes to her apartment just to sort of mope around and figure out what's wrong. But while he's there, he finds a little scout tracker. He's like, that's weird, because Padme's apartment's been empty for years.
Padme's dead.
And so he goes to hunt where the like scanner is coming from down, and he finds what appears to be, for all intents and purposes, and I could easily be wrong.
Yeah.
Looks a lot like Padme.
I'll get the image up here because I read this last night and I was like, what? But I do have a theory about this. So we'll go to the end. As you can see, there's Padme there. I'll have it in the image to come up just so you can see because this is not very, very detailed for you here. But there's also just a little bit before that popped me massively involving a rebel Gungan. Where they're like, Commander, locals have finally gone crazy breaching the doors. And it's like, wait. And then he gets like ripped apart by an alien spider thing. So that was very entertaining. But yes, at the end of the issue, Vader comes face to face with what is supposedly Padme, but I don't think it's going to be Padme. We have a few other solicitations coming up where Padme is front and center to all the covers, and I believe Weird and Cool kind of wrapped with the story basically saying that, yeah, this one's really going to sell very quickly because it could basically mean that we've rewritten the Star Wars continuity. Now, Zoe, as you may know, as a big prequel aficionado, that Padme Amidala had a lot of decoys. Now, I wonder how many of those decoys were effectively body doubles as well. So I'm not, fully versed in all of the Padme kind of lore that there is. I haven't read any of the novels about Padme specifically, but I do know that she had a lot of body decoys. And I wonder if maybe this is one decoy left behind who is very much Padme's doppelganger. And that's something Vader doesn't immediately recognize. He's just there like, Padme? He's just there, like his eyesight's not the same as it was anymore. Like he's not downloaded the firmware update in like quite a few years.
It's been a while.
The Emperor keeps on reminding them, and he's just there like pushing him aside, like he's the old Microsoft paperclip, like go away. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be a decoy. I don't know.
I was thinking either that or Padme did have a sister, if memory serves, and I know they didn't look that similar in the films, but given that Darth Vader probably is very blind now, and given that obviously they've aged a bit and thus might look more similar in their old age, there's also a chance of that, or shapeshifter shenanigans, which is always possible in Star Wars.
Yes, it could be. There is a shapeshifting race of aliens. There's the one in Attack of the Clones who's there. It's like, it's Django, and then before she can say Django, it just goes like that and ends up looking like a crocodile. But yeah, very interesting comic. I don't think, as someone who has been keeping up with a lot of the expanded universe stuff for me, this issue didn't really have much going for me personally. I love the Kieran Gillen Darth Vader, and I have fond memories of the Charles Soule series as well. But this one I felt was a little bit of a weird first issue. There's an obligatory fight scene there, which I felt was kind of unnecessary. We already know Darth Vader's cool. You don't need to remind us that he's cool. But a great last hook, I must admit, and I'm interested to see where the series is going next.
And if it brings us an army of Padme clones, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars is big on cloning right now, isn't it, J.J. Abrams? But anyway, moving on from Star Wars to something that is more familiar territory for us, because some big stuff happened in Batman this week. Now, as most of you know, I've not been reading Batman for a long, long time, and this latest series hasn't really caught my eye for a bunch of different reasons. But Zoe, you're particularly enthralled by it, and there was some big stuff that happened this week, and one thing that was unintentionally hilarious.
So, because Ewan isn't keeping up with the Batman, I am very much the conduit through which he learns about it. And I never really like to explain it too much before we do the news. So, essentially, in order to explain this story, I sent him a picture of just the Penguin.
Massive spoilers, by the way, as well. So if you haven't actually read this issue, please just go away and read it and then come back. But yes, without the way, spoilers. Done. You're gone. Right. Okay. So what happens?
Penguin's getting his throat slit.
But you need to mention here the way he gets his throat slit. Is it out of context? Just on Slack, I get this message of just Penguin, just with his throat, his blood gushing out. You know the noise he makes? The Burgess Meredith. Wah! Imagine dying or getting like stabbed in the back, going oh, and then your first reaction is wah. I mean, I know he's a penguin, and I know Burgess Meredith, God rest his soul, had a very big influence on the character. But at the same time, you're going to leave with this really emotional death, and the noise you want him to make is wah.
The problem is, as well, I can't separate that from Wario or Waluigi, so I was like, this is the weirdest.
It's very Waluigi. I don't know, I saw that moment, and he gets stabbed, so can you explain any of the context?
I think it's very emotional. So one of the very interesting things with this is that currently it appears that both the Penguin and the Joker might be dead. Obviously, it's Batman, so there's a good chance that either a Lazarus pit will show up or it's part of a larger plot. But we see the Joker, we literally see his dead body in a coffin. Catwoman goes to find it.
That's a carryover from the Tom King one, isn't it?
Yes, but she is suitably surprised, as we all are. And then later on in the comic, when Batman goes to confront Penguin to try and figure out exactly what's going on, Penguin gets his throat slit by a Deathstroke.
It's Deathstroke?
Oh, yeah.
Old Slade?
It's hardcore,
Back up to his old wily ways again.
Back up to murdering, just...
Better than sleeping with his fiancées? His son's fiance?
More moral, I would say.
Yeah.
But essentially, Batman is like, oh, let me save you, Penguin. And Penguin's like, no, that will not be happening.
I want to die. Why won't you let me die, Batman?
So I feel like there's a pretty good chance that both of them are alive, but it does also lead to some pretty interesting theories that they might be leading up to the 5G thing by just murdering as many.
I was gonna say, it reminds me kind of what they did with the X-Men before Dawn of X, or before House of X and Powers of 10 came along, where literally everyone died, and then they introduced the eggs, and everyone was fine again. So maybe that's the whole thing.
I think it'd be very good, and I think, although obviously it's frustrating to almost know that it probably won't last, I think killing as many Batman villains as you can is a really interesting way to build up to a bigger villain, because we've never really seen it done before, or at least never seen it done with like, oh, there's the Penguin getting brutally murdered. See you later, I guess.
Wah, indeed. But yeah, that wasn't the only comic that came out this week. It was a big, big week. I actually picked up quite a bunch of stuff, including, I'm just going to just flex all the different things that I got. I got X-Men and Fantastic Four #1 by Chip Zdarsky, who is my favorite writer at the moment. If you're not reading his Daredevil, please go read that as well. This week's issue is also brilliant now that it has Jorge Fawns on art, and he's so good. But yeah, X-Men Fantastic Four is probably, I've kind of not really been keeping up with the X-Men stuff after, Dawn of X began. I dipped in with a few of the #1 issues, but I think it's something I'm going to have to trade with because there is too much X-Men now. The best thing about House of X and Powers of 10 was that it was the only X-Men series, and it was nice, and it was an event, and everyone was, unraveling the mystery together, but it was just, now that we have all these different titles, I'm like, but one thing I'm not going to miss is Chip Zdarsky, and this issue basically confirms that Reed Richards is the worst father of the century.
We'd always know.
Yeah, so it builds upon that tease that we had, I think it was in House of X #1 or 2, I think it was probably 1, where we see that, the X-Men basically leave a threat to the Richards family, being like, hey, your boy Franklin, he's actually he's a mutant, and we're gonna come for him sooner or later because he's kind of the most powerful being in the cosmos, so we want him. And obviously the Fantastic Four aren't too keen with that. I've not been reading the Dan Slott series, so there's all sorts of stuff that happens in here that I'm like, wait, what? He's aged? When
It's wild.
When did Reed Richards get facial hair and all that sort of thing? But yeah, it's a great issue. We kind of basically have a thing where we learn that Reed Richards has put in a nullifier on Franklin's mutant abilities. He's concerned that he's losing losing his powers, and it's basically revealed at the end that Reed has stopped him from going through the Krakauer gates. And yeah, it's just a really heartfelt issue, kind of classic Zdarsky, where there's so much pathos and like humor going on. And yeah, it sets up a really interesting conflict, I thought.
I really wish I could like Reed Richards, because he is a superhero.
Yes.
But it seems every time I see him, he's doing something like very sketchy for the greater good, and it's like, so you are Doctor Doom then? Because I thought it was particularly interesting in the issue, Franklin brings up to his brother, he's like, well, it's interesting, Ben, because he can do anything, but the two things he can't fix are that you are stone, and I can't control my powers.
And also you've got loads of really creepy flesh underneath that stone, a classic WhatCulture Comics vid right there. But yeah, it's one of those things where I was looking through it and I was like, this is such an interesting conflict to unpack, and it's one of those things where I'm going through it, I'm like, maybe I'm gonna have to continue reading this one because it seems like it's going to be a bit of a doozy. But yeah, please let us know what you thought of the comics that released this week down in the comments below. What did you read? Please let us know. And also, what did you think of the Darth Vader twist and the Batman twist? Did you think that Penguin's death was unintentionally comic? And what did you think about Reed Richards being a bit of a dick? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe as well, and hit that notification bell because it really, really, really does help us out. You can follow me on Twitter at Ewan Runesings. You can follow Zoe on Twitter at
Zemescal.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.